All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, I think we need to mentally pack our bags.
Oh, yeah. Where are we off to?
We are going right to the edge of Ireland.
Ah.
And I've got a stack of documents here that I swear if you get close enough, they actually smell like peat smoke and sea salt.
Okay, I'm in. So we're talking about Irish whiskey.
Irish whiskey. But, before we even get into the details, we have to talk about the big green elephant in the room, right?
A stereotype, you absolutely have to.
When I say Irish whiskey, just what's the first thing that pops into your head? Like, for most people.
Honestly, I think of smooth, I think of soft, I think of something triple distilled and, well, easy. It's the friendly whiskey, the safe bet.
Safe, that's the word. Smooth, unpeated, approachable. That's the global brand they've built. And it's been hugely successful.
No doubt. It's saved the industry in many ways.
But the material we're diving into today, it basically takes that entire reputation and just sets it on fire.
It's a total deconstruction of that idea.
We're looking at the Ardara Distillery in County Donegal. And their entire mission, based on these distillery archives and some really great profiles from spirits experts in Denmark, isn't just to make a new product. It's to resurrect this lost, wild style of Irish whiskey.
A style that is smoky, peated, and, as the source says, unapologetic.
Exactly. Unapologetic.
And that's really the core of why this is so fascinating. This isn't just another distillery opening to cash in on the boom. It feels more like a cultural reclamation project.
What do you mean by that?
Well, they're making an argument. They're trying to prove that the smooth and soft reputation is actually a pretty modern invention, a pivot.
Right.
They're saying the real history, especially in their part of the country, in Donegal, was gritty and smoky and full of character.
So for anyone listening, if you think you know Irish whiskey, I want you to just sort of put that knowledge on a shelf for a little while.
We're going somewhere different.
We're going to the banks of the Owen-Tucker River to figure out how you rebuild a ghost.
A very, very smoky ghost.
So let's start with the why. Because, let's be honest, opening a distillery from scratch is a monumentally difficult way to make money.
Oh, it's a terrible business plan if you want quick returns. Years of waiting, huge capital investment, endless regulations.
So why Donegal? Why this specific spot on the map?
To get that, you really have to understand the place itself. They call it the Wild Atlantic Way for a reason. This isn't the gentle rolling green hills you see on postcards of, say, Southern Ireland.
No.
This is rugged, it's dramatic, the land is constantly being beaten by the Atlantic Ocean, it's windswept, it's wet, it's elemental.
And historically, this area was a distilling hub.
A huge one.
Yeah.
But it was a mix of legal and, shall we say, less than legal operation.
A lot of illicit stills in the hills.
A lot. And before the whole industry fell apart in the early 1900s, because of trade wars, American prohibition, all of that, Donegal had a really distinct style.
So they weren't making the same light floral whiskey you'd get from a big Dublin distillery.
Not at all. They were making whiskey with what they had. And one thing they had in absolute abundance was peat.
So the mission here, as the notes describe it, isn't really invention. It's archaeology almost.
It's remembrance. The sources keep using the word reawakening, and I think that's the perfect frame for it.
Right.
The industry didn't vanish because the whiskey was bad. It vanished because of politics and economics. So Ardara is basically asking this huge what-if question.
But if that collapse never happened?
Exactly. What would Donegal whiskey taste like today if it had been allowed to evolve on its own terms for the last 100 years?
That's a great question. And to answer it, we have to look at the people behind it. The founders, James and Moira Doherty.
And James's backstory is crucial here. He's not some hobbyist who decided to follow a dream.
No. The sources detail his career, and it's serious. He was a high-level executive in the global spirits industry, worked in Africa, worked in Asia. He understands the machine.
He knows how alcohol is made, marketed, and sold on a massive international scale. He's an insider.
Which is so interesting because usually these craft stories are about an outsider trying to break in.
But it seems he's an insider with a rebel's heart, because despite all that success, the documents talk about this pull to come home to Donegal.
It's driven by childhood memories and a family legacy, the classic hero's journey.
It is. But he didn't come back to retire. He came back with a purpose. He came back to, well, to pick a fight.
A fight with what?
With the idea of what Irish whiskey had become. You know, when the industry finally started to recover in the late 20th century, the big players decided that smoothness was the key.
It was their unique selling proposition against Scotch.
Precisely. The marketing was basically, we are not Scotch. We don't have that challenging smoke. We are easy. We are welcoming.
And it worked. The category's booming. You can't argue with that.
You can't argue with the sales figures, no. But in the process, it kind of erased the regional differences. It created this monolith. If you're from a place like Donegal in 1880, your whiskey isn't going to taste smooth and easy. It's going to taste of the earth and the sea and the smoke from your fire.
This brings us to that idea of terroir. We hear it with wine all the time. Does it really apply to whiskey? Or is that just, flowery marketing language?
It's a huge debate, but Ardara is clearly betting the entire distillery on the idea that it matters. And for them, terroir isn't just about the soil the barley grew in.
It's everything.
It's the specific water from their river. It's the chemical makeup of the local peat they use for smoking. It's the damp, salty air that seeps into the warehouses and affects how the spirit ages in the cask.
The goal, as one source puts it, is to reflect the wild beauty of the place in the bottle.
And they mean that literally. So plans are announced in the late 2010s. Construction is finished by 2022. It's a beautiful, modern facility. But the real revolution isn't the architecture. It's what's happening inside the stills.
Okay, let's get into that. Section 2 of our notes, the liquid science. And this is where things get, well, they seem almost contradictory.
Paradoxical is the word I'd use, and that's where the brilliance of it lies.
All right, so walk me through it. First, they use triple distillation. That's classic Irish, right?
Yes, it's one of the hallmarks of the style. Most Scotch is double distilled. Most Irish is triple.
And the whole point of that third distillation is to make the spirit lighter and smoother, correct?
In general, yes. Each distillation is a purification step. You're boiling the alcohol into a vapor, leaving heavier compounds behind. So by the third pass, you've stripped out a lot of the oils and impurities, and you're left with a very clean, very light spirit.
Okay, so far so safe. That sounds like the Irish whiskey we all know.
Right, but then they do this other thing, this all-grain-in method.
This is the part I didn't get.
This is the key. This is the whole thing. It sets them apart from almost every other Irish distillery making this style of whiskey.
So what does all grain in actually mean?
Okay, think about how whiskey is normally made. You start by making a sort of beer. You take your crushed barley, mix it with hot water in a huge tank of mash tun.
You're trying to extract the sugars from the grain.
Exactly. And once you have that sugary water, the wort, 99% of distilleries then drain that liquid off and leave the wet grains behind.
Right. You separate them, the solids are done.
They're done. They get sent off as cattle feed. You ferment and distill only the clear liquid wort. It's clean, it's efficient, it's predictable.
Okay.
Ardara says, no, we're keeping the grain.
Wait, they leave the solid husks and bits of barley in the liquid?
They leave it in, they ferment it all together, solids and liquid, a big, thick, porridge-like mixture.
But why? That sounds incredibly difficult and messy.
It is. It's a production nightmare. It can clog your equipment. It can scorch on the bottom of the still if you're not careful, which would ruin the whole batch. It's a massive headache.
So what's the payoff?
The payoff is flavor and texture. Think about making a stock. Where's the deep flavor? Is it just in the water?
No, it's in the bones, the vegetables, the solids.
Exactly. By keeping that grain in the mix for longer, they are pulling out every last bit of character oils, fatty acids, proteins, cereal notes. It gives the spirit a richer, oilier, creamier mouthfeel.
So it's the difference between a clear broth and a hearty stew.
That's a perfect analogy. You get a chewiness to the spirit that you just can't get from clear wort.
So back to the paradox. They're creating this really heavy, oily, character-filled liquid.
Right. A big, robust base spirit.
And then they're putting it through triple distillation.
And that's the genius of it. They use the grain-in method to build this massive foundation of flavor and texture. Then they use the triple distillation not to strip it all away, but to polish it, to knock off the harsh, jagged edges without sacrificing the weight.
So you get the body, but without the burn.
You get complexity and smoothness at the same time. It's a hybrid approach that, on paper, shouldn't work as well as it does.
That's fascinating. And as if that wasn't enough, then we get to the smoke. The numbers in these notes they're just staggering. 55 ppm.
55. Which, for Irish whiskey, is almost unheard of.
Can you put that number in context for people who don't spend their weekends reading about phenols? What does ppm even mean?
ppm is phenol parts per million. It's a measure of how much of the smoky compounds from peat have been absorbed by the barley during the drying process.
And a standard unpeated Irish whiskey would be, what, 0?
0 ppm, maybe 1 or 2, just from ambient stuff. A whiskey that's marketed as peated in Ireland, like a Connemara, might be around 20 ppm.
And Ardara is at 55.
55. That puts them in the same league as the smokiest, most intense whiskeys from Islay in Scotland. We're talking Ardbeg, Laphroaig levels of peat. This isn't a wisp of smoke. This is a full-on bonfire.
So you've got this collision, an intensely smoky spirit made with a traditionally smooth Irish distillation method using this old-world, texturally rich grain-in technique.
It's a beautiful monster. It's unlike anything else, really.
And there's one more detail here that feels important.
Non-chill filtered. I see that on bottles now and then. Does it actually make a difference? Oh, a huge difference. And it connects directly back to that grain-in method we were just talking about.
How so?
Well, all those lovely oils and fatty acids, they work so hard to get into the spirit. If you chill that whiskey down, say, by putting it in the fridge or adding ice, those compounds can congeal and make the liquid go cloudy.
A bit hazy.
Exactly. And the big commercial brands decided a long time ago that consumers see cloudy and think flawed.
Right, they want their drink to be crystal clear.
So they perform a cosmetic procedure called chill filtration. Before bottling, they cool the whiskey to near freezing and pass it through a fine filter. This strips out all those oils and fats.
But you just said the oils and fats are what create the texture and mouthfeel.
You see the problem. You're sacrificing flavor for appearance. By being non-chill filtered, Ardara is making a statement. They're saying, we prefer texture over clarity. We don't care if it goes a bit cloudy. This is the authentic spirit.
It's that unapologetic philosophy again.
It runs through everything they do.
Okay, so they have this incredibly complex process. But there's a big problem with any whiskey process, isn't there?
The problem of time.
Right. You build this amazing distillery, you finalize your recipe, you make this incredible new spirit in 2022, and then you have to put it in a barrel and wait.
For 3 years and a day, minimum, before you can even legally call it Irish whiskey. And for a premium single malt, you're going to want to wait even longer.
So how do you pay your staff? How do you keep the lights on for 3 or 4 years with 0 income?
This is where the Dohertys showed they weren't just passionate distillers. They were really smart business people. They launched a different brand while they waited. They launched the Silky.
Now, I have seen this brand around, but this wasn't their own whiskey at first, was it?
No, not at all. The Silky began as what's known as an independent bottling. They would source mature whiskey from other larger Irish distilleries and then blend it to their own specifications.
So they were acting as curators or blenders, not distillers.
Exactly. It's a very old and respected tradition in the whiskey world, but it was also a brilliant strategic move.
How so? Because it just brought in cash flow.
It did that, which was essential, but it did something much more important. It was effectively a palate training exercise for their future customers.
A palate training exercise. Explain what you mean by that.
Okay, think back to the start. The market thinks Irish whiskey is soft and unpeated. If Ardara had just appeared out of nowhere in 2025 and dropped this 55 ppm peat monster on everyone, it would have been a shock.
People might have rejected it, said, this doesn't taste like Irish whiskey.
They almost certainly would have. So Ardara used the Silky range to gently guide the market toward their way of thinking. They eased people into the idea of smoky Irish whiskey.
You can see it in the progression of the releases. They started with the legendary Silky.
Right. The entry point. It's a blend. It's very approachable. It has maybe just a whisper of peat in the background. It's the gateway.
Okay, so you try that. You like it. It's not intimidating.
Then a little later, they released the Dark Silky. The name itself tells you what's happening. The flavor is getting deeper, richer. The source material calls it an ode to days gone by, and they dial up the smokiness significantly.
You're training your palate to accept more peat.
You are. And then they released the Midnight Silky, which is even smokier still. By the time they've done this over several years, they've not only established a brand name, they've built an audience of fans who are now actively seeking out smoky, characterful Irish whiskey.
They created the demand for the product they were making in secret.
It's absolutely brilliant marketing. They taught the audience their language so that when their own whiskey was finally ready to speak, people were ready to listen.
And now that time has come. Section 4 of our notes, the main event.
The graduation day.
The Ardara 2025 edition. This is it. The first spirit distilled and matured at the Ardara Distillery.
Heavily peated single malt Irish whiskey, 46% ABV. This is the culmination of that entire process we just talked about.
The notes call it a historic moment, and you can see why. It's the physical proof of that entire reawakening concept.
It's the ghost made real.
I'm looking at the tasting profile here. It reads, well, it reads like you'd expect. Intense notes of peat smoke, warm spices, and malted nuances.
And that phrase, malted nuances, that's key. That's the grain-in method talking. It means you're not just tasting the barrel, the vanilla, the caramel. You're tasting the barley itself, the cereal.
The raw material.
Yes. And the finish is described as long and robust.
Which comes from those oils we talked about, right?
Yeah.
The non-chill filtration.
Absolutely. That texture coats your palate, and the flavor just lingers.
The Danish experts who profiled it really hone in on that paradox again, that unique combination of triple distilled lightness with heavy peat and oily texture. They say it creates a complexity you just don't find anywhere else.
It's carving out its own space. It's not trying to be a smoky Scotch. It's not trying to be a smooth Irish whiskey. It's trying to be a Donegal whiskey.
So let's be blunt. Who is this for? Is the average person going to walk into a store and enjoy this?
Probably not, and I think Ardara is perfectly fine with that.
Yeah.
The sources are clear. This is for the enthusiast. It's for the whiskey collector, the peat lover, the person who is actively looking for something different and challenging.
This isn't something you're just going to mix with Coke.
If you mix this with Coke, a part of James Doherty's soul dies somewhere in Donegal. This is a whiskey that demands your attention.
Fair enough. Now, we've focused almost entirely on whiskey, but one of the surprising things in the research was how diverse their portfolio actually is.
Yeah, they're not a one-trick pony, which is smart. But what I find interesting is that the other spirits they make aren't just cash flow products. They follow the exact same terroir-driven philosophy.
Let's start with the most historical one. They make a poitín.
Ah, poitín, the original Irish spirit.
For anyone who doesn't know, what is it?
In short, it's Irish moonshine. For centuries, when distilling was either illegal or heavily taxed, this is what people in rural Ireland made for themselves in small pot stills hidden away in the hills.
So it's basically unaged whiskey. New make spirit.
Essentially, yes. It's a clear spirit, usually very high proof, made from whatever you had on hand, barley, potatoes, molasses. It has this rebellious, illicit history.
And Ardara has their own version, Frank Carr's Irish poitín.
Named for a local figure. And I love the ingredients they list. Smoked malt, sweet molasses, and oats.
Oats are an interesting touch.
Oats add a wonderful creaminess, a silky texture. It's a clever way to smooth out what can be a very fiery spirit.
And by making a legal, high-quality poitín, they're honoring that entire hidden history of Irish distilling, aren't they?
They are. They're acknowledging that the story isn't just about the big fancy distilleries, it's also about the farmers and the rebels who kept the tradition alive.
Okay, from the rebellious to the refined. They also make a gin. And Doulaman gin.
A maritime gin.
Which again fits the theme. They're not just making a standard London dry gin with juniper and lemon peel.
No, if you're making a spirit on the coast of Donegal, it should taste like the coast of Donegal.
So what does maritime mean in this context? Seaweed?
It has to. The source material talks about it capturing the essence of the sea. They're almost certainly using local edible seaweeds as botanicals, things like dulse or carrageen moss.
What kind of flavor does that give a gin?
A savory, slightly salty umami quality. It's what people call briny. It's a gin that tastes of salt spray and minerals. It's incredibly evocative.
And finally, they have a vodka. The Misty Asaranka vodka. Now, vodka is usually defined by its lack of flavor.
Commercial vodka is, yes. The goal is neutrality, but craft vodka is a different beast. The goal is to retain some character from the base ingredients.
And this one is inspired by a specific place, the Asaranka Waterfall.
A local booty spot.
And it's infused with local botanicals, gorse and rowan berries.
Now that is pure Donegal. Gorse is that bright yellow coconut-scented flower you see everywhere, and rowan berries are these tart, sharp red berries.
You get this sweet coconut aroma and a tart, bitter flavor.
It's a unique and very specific taste of the landscape, and they even put the date of birth on each bottle, which reinforces that small batch, handcrafted idea.
So we have the spirits, which are deeply connected to the place. But Ardara also understands that today, you're not just selling a product, you're selling an experience.
Distillery tourism is a huge part of the business now. People want to go to the source.
And they have a full visitor experience set up. Tasting tours, of course, but also non-tasting tours.
Which is a great option for designated drivers or just people who are more interested in the history and the machinery than the alcohol itself.
But the most interesting part of their tourism strategy, I think, is how they actively encourage you to leave the distillery.
Yes. They're not trying to trap you in the gift shop. They're acting as a tour guide for the entire region.
They know that if you fall in love with the place, you'll understand their whiskey on a deeper level.
Exactly. The product will make more sense. The source notes list some of the spots they recommend, and it's like a checklist for a wild adventure.
Magara Beach, with its caves and sands.
Elemental, wild.
The Slive Cliffs.
Which are some of the highest sea cliffs in Europe. They are just breathtakingly massive. And if you stand there feeling that wind and seeing that view, and then you go taste Ardara's whiskey.
You get it. You taste the salt in the wind you just felt.
The connection becomes real. It's not just a story anymore.
They also point you to the Asaranka waterfall, the inspiration for the vodka, and to the local pubs and restaurants.
Which is so important. It shows they're part of the community. They're not some isolated factory. They're sending business to their neighbors. It builds this whole ecosystem.
So we've seen the past they're reviving and the present they've built. The Danish source also gives us a peek into the future. It sounds like this 2025 single malt is really just the beginning.
It's the opening act. They have a full core range planned.
First up is an ongoing Ardara single malt, described as frugal, light smoke, maritime.
Frugal is such an interesting choice of word. It suggests something that's not sweet or rich, but rather lean, clean, maybe a bit austere, very true to that windswept landscape.
But the one that I think is going to get whiskey enthusiasts really excited is the planned Ardara single pot still.
Ah, yes. The holy grail of Irish whiskey revival.
Why is single pot still such a big deal?
Because it's Ireland's unique contribution to the whiskey world. Single malt is made with 100% malted barley. Single pot still is a mixture of malted barley and unmalted barley.
And what does that unmalted barley do to the flavor?
It adds this distinct, spicy, oily character, a certain prickle on the tongue. It's what gives famous pot still whiskeys like Redbreast their signature profile. It's creamy and spicy at the same time.
And Ardara is going to make that style, but with peat smoke.
A touch of peat, the notes say.
That feels like the ultimate expression of what they're trying to do. That is the 19th century Donegal style, right there in a glass.
It absolutely is. That specific combination, the spicy pot still character and the earthy peat smoke, is something that has been almost entirely absent from the market for 100 years. It's going to be a landmark release.
And they're not stopping with just the core range. They mention ongoing peated expressions and experimental casks.
This is where they get to play. They're looking at finishing their peated spirit in sherry casks, port casks, rum casks.
Ooh, peated whiskey from a rum cask sounds incredible. That combination of sweet and smoke.
It's a classic pairing. The sweetness from the rum residue in the wood can round out the sharp edges of the peat smoke beautifully.
But the detail that really stood out to me was this idea of locally peated batches.
Yes, that's the next level of terroir.
I thought all peat was local. Isn't that the point?
Not always. A lot of distilleries, even very famous ones, don't peat their own barley. They buy it pre-peated from massive industrial maltings.
So an Irish distillery might be using barley that was peated in Scotland.
It's very possible, but Ardara is talking about digging up turf from their own local bogs and using that specific peat to smoke their own barley on site.
And does the peat from different places actually taste different?
Massively different. Peat is just decomposed plant matter. The plants that grow in a coastal bog on Islay are different from the plants that grow in an inland bog in Donegal. One might be more heather and seaweed. The other might be more moss and wood.
So the smoke itself has a different chemical signature.
It has a different flavor. This is the ultimate expression of place. You're literally tasting the ancient, decomposed landscape of Donegal.
Okay, let's pull back for the big picture. We've gone from the history to the liquid science to the future.
Yeah.
What's the main takeaway from this whole deep dive?
For me, it's about the maturation of the Irish whiskey market itself.
Not just the liquid, but the whole category.
Exactly. For decades, the industry was in recovery mode. The goal was simply to get people drinking Irish whiskey again, and the strategy was to be as friendly and approachable as possible.
To be the not Scotch.
Yes. But that phase is over. The market is mature now. Drinkers are more educated, they're more adventurous. They don't just want easy anymore. They want diversity. They want to be challenged.
And Ardara is proof that the audience is ready for that challenge.
They're proving that Irish whiskey doesn't have to be just one thing. It can be a whole spectrum of flavors. And they're reclaiming the smoky, wild, intense end of that spectrum that has been empty for far too long.
It's a hell of a story. They're basically rewriting the modern rule book by digging up the ancient one that everyone else forgot about.
That's a perfect way to summarize it.
Before we wrap up, I just want to leave you with one final thought. We've spent this whole time talking about this lost style of smoky Donegal whiskey that was just dormant for a century, and it really makes you wonder.
What else is out there?
Exactly. If this major regional style was just forgotten, what other lost styles of spirits are hiding in old books and archives? What did your average gin or rum really taste like in, say, 1860, before big industrial production smoothed everything out?
That's a fantastic question. History is always written by the victors, and in the spirits world, the victors were the big, efficient brands. Who knows how many weird, unique, hyper-local flavors just disappeared when the small, inefficient producers went out of business.
And who knows what other distillers are out there right now, in some other forgotten corner of the world, doing exactly what Ardara did, blowing the dust off an old recipe and getting ready to reawaken something incredible.
I hope they are. I'll be waiting with a glass ready.
Me too.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. Go find something wild to drink.